It is time for Around the 412 with Smitty and Tyler.
Welcome back to another episode of Around the 412. I am Tyler. With me, as always, is my co-host Smitty, who will follow us on all of our social medias at Around the 412. Go subscribe to our YouTube channel. Leave a like on the videos. And if you have any questions, we can answer them on the show. Drop them down in the comments. As well, go check out some of the links we have in the description. We've got our Christmas fundraiser, Rocking Around the 412, year 7 of it, where we provide children Christmas in the local Pittsburgh area. So if you're interested in that or want to share it, go check that out. It's the top link. It's going to be there from now until the middle of December when we start giving out the gifts that we are able to get. So go check that out. This week, we have a special guest on, a recurring guest. A year ago, we had him on. Happy to have him on again. Josh Getzoff, the voice of the Pittsburgh Penguins on TV. That is actually something that I discovered the first time. Last year, that hadn't been announced yet. That was new. So, Josh, what was that whole just jumping into it? We haven't even talked about that with you.
Yeah, that was it's great to be back on with you guys, and no pressure now that I know that I'm a part of the intro. I feel like I don't even know what to say. I mean, I'm humbled. Wow, it's awesome.
Just don't copyright us.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't going to bring that up, but hey, I'll let it slide. Whatever. I'm not that picky. But it was a whirlwind of a year. I mean, it was a lot of fun. Like you said, we talked last summer. At that point, no decisions had been made. Nothing was even really in motion as far as any movement was concerned. And lo and behold, a couple months later, everything kind of came on really quickly. Actually, right around this time, honestly, last summer was when everything started to drop. As we were just talking before we came on, that's only a few weeks before training camp, about a month before preseason, and a month and a half before things kind of get going. So it was a sprint. But it was a blast. A dream job always has been to work for the Penguins and be able to call their games, but to do it on TV was a whole different level. And I couldn't have been more excited to do it, and looking forward to jumping in the booth in year 2 here in just over a month.
Possibility. I'm not saying that this is why. Possibility the Penguins maybe got wind of the episode that you were on last year. We're like, this guy's so good on camera. We got to get him on TV.
They're like, wait, is that the guy from the intro? He's hired.
But in all seriousness, that's all. So you didn't have any idea that transition was taking place when you were on here last year then?
No, because it was around, I think it may even have been a little earlier in the summer, because I want to say we did it before free agency last year.
It was right before. It was like a week before free agency. Yeah.
Yeah, so it was.
Yeah, we got to bring up, but.
Yeah, I know I got one right that we all wish maybe I had gotten wrong looking back on the past year, but at the same time, it was something that I guess I always hoped for, but I never had any idea that it was coming, right? So, and to be honest, I never thought it would come in Pittsburgh because things seemed pretty set, but sure. It did, and I couldn't be happier because we've been here now 10 years and had both our kids here. We love it here, so this place is home, and it's been great.
Yeah, just had a second kid, which, by the way, everybody wish Josh congratulations for that. Not too long ago, 7 weeks. But I want to ask you then, going from the radio to the TV, what are the biggest challenges or differences in doing that? Because for me, I'm not saying I know it's different. I'm not going to say one's easier or harder, but for me with the radio side, it's always how do you kind of paint the picture where it's like somebody that's listening is watching? So then from going from that side to the TV side, what have you found the differences / challenges to be in doing so?
They are really now, having done them in back-to-back seasons, each medium. I mean, they're totally different worlds. Like radio, it's like you said, Smitty, it's like you're painting the picture of every single play. You can't go without a single motion of action on the ice without saying where a guy is, what circle he's at, what wall he's on, what zone he's in, what direction he's moving across your radio dial, all those kind of things, while also staying on top of the play. TV, I don't need to tell you that Sidney Crosby is at the left wing circle. You can see it on your TV. And I think in the very beginning, understandably so, having done radio, that was in my call a little bit. But as the season went on, especially if you listen to the end, it's kind of found its way. I found a happy medium where I can throw identifiers in there, but not necessarily drop them so descriptively like you would on radio. But I think at the core of the two, your emotion in the moment sells the moment. With radio, you're kind of always, I was once told and I always think about this when you call a game on radio. It's kind of like a roller coaster when you call it, like your voice is going up and it's going down and it's going up and it's going down and it's going up, because you're just kind of like calling the cadence of the game. With TV, you want to try to do that in less words with the same kind of like oomph and enthusiasm in those moments. And of course that took some adjustment for me. Like it wasn't something that I had done in the past, but at the same time, it was something that I was really eager to improve upon each game. And the other thing, honestly, which I really enjoyed with TV, is that you can let the moment breathe. You can let the color guy jump in more. Radio, Borky and he would jump in just because we loved letting each other go in those moments. But in radio, it's hard. If Borky's talking while a play's going on, you don't have no idea what's happening. So if something were to happen, you hear the horn go off. You're like, whoa, what just happened? But if Borky's talking on TV and a goal is scored, yeah, it's not ideal, but you still see the goal go in. You're not missing anything. So a little bit more of, I think, the production, the storytelling, the show is there with TV. The actual call at its purest form is there with radio.
That's actually something I'm glad you brought it up, because I was going to compliment you, because I thought that in year one, you did a good transition of letting a moment breathe. Because I figured that was something that could be hard, transitioning from radio to TV. But I mean, I'm just not trying to pat you on the back too much, but I thought you did a really good job of being able to do that. And
Tyler, there was,
in some of these big goals, like letting the moments speak for themselves on the TV itself.
You don't remember what call it was, do you? Like, there was one specifically that I remember. Now that you said that, I even tagged Josh in it. Like, I quoted it and was like, this might be like my favorite call of all time, because like just letting the crowd be a part of the moment, knowing your place. I just think it's the timing, like getting it down. And like Tyler said, in year one, to like understand the moment and kind of how to call it and do that. Yeah, I can't, man, that's going to bother me if I can't go back and find it as we're going through the episode here. But what is your, Josh, so what's like the day-to-day look like for you once we do get into the season?
Yeah, the day-to-days, it's not that different from what it was with radio, just as far as like a game day thing. But, normal game days, say a 7:00 game, Penguins have their morning skate at 10:30. The opponent will skate at 11:30. In between the Penguins skating and the opponent skating, there's a locker room availability. Sullivan will speak. And then after the opponent skating, their locker room's open. Their coach speaks. And then, I generally, I'm all around for all that in the morning. And then after that, I come home and I probably prep for about 2 to 3 hours at home per game. And then I go in around 5. We have a rehearsal, regardless of who the color guy was that night last year. We'd rehearse all our elements, like the stuff you'd see, the graphics that would come up, the sponsorships that would come up, like the statistical numbers for certain guys, anything we're going to see in the broadcast. Our producer, Lowell McDonald, and I basically sat there for 15 minutes and went through every single thing. I wrote a note down about it so that if it came up, I would have some kind of reference point to at least speak about it in the broadcast. And, say there's 35 of those things, maybe 15 come up max in a game, maybe 5 come up. It's all flow of game stuff, but there's a ton there, and it's good to have them all. Our group is like unbelievable. That was the other thing that blew my mind. Like the production guys and the guys and girls in the truck with Sportsnet Pittsburgh and formerly AT&T Sportsnet, like these guys are so good at what they do. And I think we need to realize, like in Pittsburgh, for the market size we are, which is like a mid-20s, high 20s, as far as the size is concerned, like as opposed to a New York City that's number 1. Our production and our crew here are top level sports people, and they know what they're doing, and they know how to play the games. They know how to communicate the games. So like that kind of stuff was key for me. And then, obviously the game would start at 7:00. I'd do warm up before that and just kind of do my cadence, which I do every game, and just go through each player as they're on the ice, practice my verbs, different kinds of describing how guys shoot and pass and hit and everything like that. And then basically that's it. I mean, I'm pretty animated during warm up. I like to, like where we are right now, we're in the Captain Morgan Club, which is just the best. You're right. You talk about like letting the crowd breathe. It's easy there because in those big goals and those big moments, you're in it. Like I'm in the crowd. So there were a lot of big goals last year. I would like look around the building while after I called the goal, I'm just like, this is awesome. I'm like right in the middle of all this, like high-fiving the fans in front of us that were there and everything. And it was great. Awesome. Like we had a blast there every single time there was a big moment, especially like down the stretch when there were a few of those games, which seemed to really matter.
That's one of the ones I found it. So I'm gonna be able to share my screen for this call, but it was Erik Karlsson's overtime goal against the Detroit Red Wings. It's 6-5 finish, which at that point, man, I was like riding a high. I was like, Penguins are going to climb their way all the way back because they obviously dug themselves a bit of a hole towards the end of the season. It looked like they were going to be able to come all the way back and find themselves into a playoff spot. That obviously didn't happen. So I'll play that in a little bit. But I wanted to kind of just go over basically how you feel about the state of the team right now. A lot has happened over the offseason. There's been a lot of change, probably mostly within that bottom six group. Obviously, it looks like they're going to run it back with the same goaltending tandem. You obviously still have the core here: Sidney Crosby, Gino, Erik Karlsson, Letang, et cetera, et cetera. Rutger McGroarty is kind of the name that everybody's talking about right now. Probably one of the more high-profile moves that they've made this offseason. Clearly didn't want to have a future in Winnipeg. And when I saw they were trading for him, was very excited. See Braden Yager going the other way. That was kind of unexpected for him to be the guy that they parted with. But Josh, what was your take on that? And what should we maybe expect? If you had, I don't know if you watch a ton of Rutger McGroarty, what your take on him is as a player, how he could potentially fit in.
Yeah, I mean, I am pretty religious about watching the World Juniors every year. I feel like they're great. So I'm not going to act like I watch a ton of college hockey. I do not. I like to watch the Frozen Four. Maybe if it's on from time to time and I can catch it in between games, I'll watch a little bit, but I don't watch it a ton otherwise. So I didn't see a ton of Rutger at Michigan, but I did see him in the World Juniors when he was the captain and they won gold, and he was just a menace out there. And I mean, my thing with him that I've said to a few people is, you mentioned it, Smitty, like look at Rutger McGroarty for who he is. He's, a shade over 6 foot. I think he's like 6'1". He tips the scales just north of 200 pounds. He's plays with an edge. He can score goals. He's not afraid to go to the dirty areas. He's won. That's an important thing for a young player. He's played in big games. He's won. And he's a high-level prospect. Like, I do not remember since I've come here, which is a decade plus now, the Penguins having a guy that has that kind of I don't want to say aura because that's, putting too much pressure on the kid, but that kind of description around him. I don't remember like a kid coming up and being a part of our prospect pool that people were like, wow, this kid could legitimately be a stud in the NHL.
Yeah. Pedigree, maybe the word you were pedigree.
Yeah, stud.
Higher pedigree. Yeah.
Yeah, high pedigree. There you go. Yeah, he's a good guy. Like he's a good player. He's going to be a good ad for this team. I really do think that he's going to get a long look at playing in the top six. I have a hard time believing, I should say, that Mike Sullivan, just knowing how he is, Rutger's not going to get handed that wing on Sidney Crosby's line. But he's going to have an opportunity to compete for it because, let's be honest, it's really him, Drew O'Connor, Anthony Beauvillier will probably get a look there in camp. I don't know if Michael Bunting will be set with Gino, but they played really well together last year, and you have to think that would continue. So there are options, but I mean, McGroarty is going to get a chance. He signed his entry-level deal. He's going to play for the Penguins this year. It's just a matter of where he will play and how many games he'll need in those spots before he starts to jump his way up the lineup, because I have no doubt this kid's going to become a really popular player in Pittsburgh in short order.
I think just getting a dude like this, like in the pipeline finally, it's such a game changer. What's going on, everybody? Smitty from Around the 412, and I just want to take a quick second to give a shout out to our folks at Game Changers. Their logo on the screen right now, right above my microphone. Over 2,000 different designs in their catalog. Luxury heavyweight material. I am wearing one of their shirts right now. Best vintage t-shirts in the game. Head over to gamechanger.la or pick6.la to pick up some shirts. And guess what? Use code AT412. Save yourself $10 on your order every single time. Again, gamechanger.la or pick6.la. Best vintage t-shirts in the game. Check them out. That wasn't part of the show last time you were on here either, Josh. I kind of just sprung that on you. But,
I mean, what did my promo read do for you guys? This is unbelievable.
there's gonna be 2 more of those that happen throughout the rest of the show. No, but I agree about Rutger McGroarty and just like how early I think that he could impact the NHL club, because that's what I was going to ask you is are you of the belief, even if it's not on the top line, you think he's in the NHL right away though to start next year?
Yes, I do. I mean, the entry level is always a little tricky because you have the option to be in Wilkes-Barre. I just think that if the Penguins went out of their way to trade Braden Yeager for this kid straight up, like I just really believe he's going to get every opportunity in training camp to be on the team. And I think that, there's an opportunity whether he's with Sid or whether he's down a little bit in the lineup. Like I've kind of envisioned this lineup in a lot of different ways because you can make a lot of arguments, especially in the bottom 6 as to who's on the team and who's not on the team, especially opening night. Things obviously will change, but right out of the gates. And I could see him on the right wing with Kevin Hayes, right behind Sid and Gino, to give him kind of a veteran centerman who also went through a similar situation with Chicago after he was drafted, where he did not sign with Chicago. He got traded to the New York Rangers and went through that personally. So that's a guy that McGroarty can lean on as well, having done this, once before in his career and obviously having a pretty solid career since then. So, I mean, I think there are options, but I do think, to answer your question, I'd be surprised if he's not in the opening night lineup unless he just completely looks out of place in the preseason, which I have a hard time believing that. Like the World Juniors are always a great projector for the National Hockey League, and he was really noticeable and a really dominant force for the U.S.
Yeah, you know what? That's a great point about Kevin Hayes in the situation, maybe being able to help him because of that. But what do you make of, not just because of what he's going to be able to do for the leadership off the ice and stuff like that, but the acquisition of Kevin Hayes? I think most people are looking at it like this is just Dubas stockpiling draft picks, which he absolutely has definitely started to do if you look at the draft capital that they have over the next few drafts. But do you still think Kevin Hayes can go on the ice, and what kind of role do you envision him having?
Yeah, I mean, he's an interesting guy, and he's he kind of falls into this category that I think, unfortunately, the Penguins have a lot of this year, and these are the what if guys. Like, what if Kevin Hayes still has a little bit left in the tank and can give you 13 to 15 goals? Like, I think he can. I think he's a pretty good defensive centerman, which is always a good thing to have deeper in your lineup. He's a great penalty killer. That's a good thing to have in your lineup. But yeah, I'm sure, he's never been the most fleet of foot. He'd probably admit that himself. And he's not going to be any faster in his mid-30s than he was in his early 30s. But he's only a couple years removed from a career year with the Flyers. And he's back, with a guy that knows him well, and Mike Sullivan. I know they went to rival schools in Boston, but they're Boston guys. Sully, I'm sure, had something to do with him coming on board here. But to your point, Kyle Dubas has picked up these draft picks with players. He's been able to take on capital. Whether, Kevin Hayes is a guy that they just used essentially to get picks, which is probably the case. And you also get a player that you can stick into your lineup on opening night and see what you have left in him. I don't think there's anything bad about that. I mean, I personally think Kevin Hayes, I understand that people rolling their eyes and being like, okay, what's the deal with this guy? Why does this guy need to be on our team? He doesn't make us any better. I don't disagree with that. But I don't think that when you look at the big picture, he's part of a group here in this bottom 6 that has improved from last year. I mean, bottom line, it's better. Like whether it's better by a couple players or, marginally, it's better. Blake Lizotte is an upgrade.
That was actually my favorite acquisition of they might have like too many guys within the bottom 6. It's going to be interesting to see how that shakes out. But like, if they didn't have so many bodies, I feel like a lot more people would be fired up about Blake Lizotte. I actually like that acquisition.
I agree with you. I think he's going to be kind of the under the radar. He's I don't want to call him Brandon Tanev. I hate to put comparables on guys because then people start to think they're those guys. But he is a high energy, high motor guy. He's small. I think he's like 5'7", 5'8". But he's not afraid, and he gets right in there. And he's speedy, and that's a good thing to have. I mean, Achari will be healthy too. He plays a heavier physical sandpaper type game, which will be good. But one of the things that you just brought up right there, I think is such a great thing going into this training camp. I was actually talking to Matt Venzel yesterday, who's the Penguins writer for the Post-Gazette, and we were saying this is about as for hockey geeks like us that just are obsessed with the nuances of the roster creation. This is going to be as cool of a training camp as we've had in a long time because of what you just said. You're talking like
Yeah.
7 or 8 guys legitimately that could be in those 3 or 4 spots in the bottom 6. I mean, you have, don't forget about Matt Nieto's coming back from injury to mix in there as well, but they go and get Cody Glass from Nashville. I mean, you have Lazat, you have Hayes, you have Eller, you have Achari, you have Beauvillier. Yeah, Puustinen, right. Is Puljujärvi a part of that? Is this Ponomarev, who they got from Carolina, in the mix? Is Koivunen, who they got from Carolina, in the mix? There's a lot of these guys that all of a sudden are a part of the roster creation that weren't there, even 4 or 5 months ago. And you go back to the back end, same kind of thing. There's a lot of guys that are in the mix there for those 5th and 6th defensive numbers on that Penguin roster that I just think it makes it interesting. I'm not so sure it makes them better overall, but it creates a competitive camp. And Mike Sullivan has not had that to its core. He's had competitive camps for positions, but he hasn't had competitive camps for like 4, 5, 6 positions in his opening night lineup, including, I think, his starting goaltender position, which is all going to be up in the air come mid-September in Cranberry.
What you just said was very interesting, but first I want to go back to the bottom 6 real quick just to ask you if, at any time seeing all these additions without a subtraction, did you or do you still feel like there could be a subtraction, like a trade out of the bottom? Like, could a Lars Eller or something be moved with all the additions that they have made?
Yeah, I mean, they have to do something, right? Like, there's obviously going to be guys that'll be waived. There's going to be players that will just simply, like they did last year. I mean, Kyle did the same thing last year, not as high profile of guys, but he went out and got a bunch of guys like Andreas Janssen comes to mind, Vinny Hinostroza, and they played all these guys in the preseason and then eventually waived 4 or 5 of them. I don't even remember how many of them got claimed. I know Janssen ended up playing in Sweden because he didn't want to play in the American League, but that's the risk you run. When you do that with your roster. And he's going to waive a few guys this year, and he may lose a few guys this year because that's just going to be the reality. They have so many guys that are going to be, eligible to play on an NHL roster that they're going to have to figure it out in that bottom 6. I do think it will, like I said, I think it creates a competitive camp, which can only benefit that group because that's the kind of part of your lineup that was the big question mark. And what are we talking about here now? 5, 6 years, 7 years has been the biggest question mark for the Penguins as far as what they need to have better in their lineup. It's that bottom 6. It's that depth production. Not worried about the guys at the top because they do it, but you need it beyond that. And they're trying to address it while also trying to walk the line of picking up draft picks and staying competitive. It's a tightrope that Kyle Dubas is walking. I don't envy him. But he's trying to make it work, and it'll be interesting to see how it all plays out.
Certainly, some of those guys that we're talking about, they're not going to be able to make the cut. Smitty from around the 412 here, and while I may not have much hair, the hair that I do have will not be cut by anybody besides Keek at Keek's Barbershop. My friend Christian Circle, been with us since day one. Keek's Barbershop, located 401 Burkitch Way, Suite 2 in Beaver, PA. Download the app, The Cut. Book an appointment with Christian today, or you can do walk-in with Tony or Ashley. But again, Keek's Barbershop, 401 Burkitch Way, Suite 2 in Beaver, PA. Go check them out. Old school vibe in there. Absolutely love it. Cannot recommend them enough. Wouldn't go anywhere else. Maybe I'll see you there. How about that for a transition? Also, Josh, you got to notice when I'm playing those, obviously those are pre-recorded. I didn't have a beard at all when I had that. And the story behind it, I don't know if you're a football guy as well.
Yeah, football guy, yeah.
Steelers offensive coordinator, Arthur Smith, as soon as he got hired, I saw a lot of people bashing the move. In solidarity, I was like, I'm going to just a mustache, like Art. So, like, that is literally the only reason that I had just a mustache at that point in time.
You pulled it off. I mean, only certain people can pull off a stash. So you did it. Yeah.
I want to ask you before we actually got some questions that we had come in through Twitter. I'm still calling it Twitter, not X.
Me too.
That I want to get to. But as far as the goaltending situation, I feel like a lot of people thought, okay, you got Jarry under the contract that he's on. They're probably not going to move off of that after one season. But can you really run it back with the same duo? So I think a lot of people thought maybe they'll just let Nedeljkovic go, despite, that he was kind of carrying a lot of the workload for them in the last few weeks of the season. I mean, what was it, like 12 straight starts that he made at one point? So a lot of people, I'm not sure, thought that he would be back, but he is on a 2-year deal. 1, did that surprise you at all? And 2, based off that being the case down the stretch, to your point that you kind of made earlier, do you think that it's going to be, kind of an open competition to see who this team's starting goaltender is?
To answer your second part first, I'll just say yes, and I'll get into that in a second. But the first part, Nedeljkovic, it surprised me because I felt like his desire was to stay. I really did think that. But I really thought that also he probably priced himself out if somebody wanted to take a run at him with how he played down the stretch. I mean, those are critical games. They're high pressure games. They every single night mattered. He started, as you mentioned, 12 games in a row, and I think he won 8 of them, and he got points in 10 of them. So anybody looking at that saying like, okay, we need a goaltender that has a little bit of a clutch gene, that has that fire when the games matter the most, like there's your case in point right there down the stretch. And I wondered going into the offseason, you always see, not that Ned would have been overpaid. You're always happy when a player gets paid, especially guys you like, and he's an awesome guy. But I think that
he's a Browns fan though. So
I do. Yeah. He loves to wear that Myles Garrett jersey, huh? Just pisses people off. Yeah. And don't worry. He knows he pisses everybody off. He just continues to do it. He's a real big, if you know, what
I can appreciate that aspect.
Yeah.
But he's a guy that I really thought when they went into free agency was on his way out, just because I thought he played well enough too. You have to realize he got $1 million bump per year in this new contract. So he actually did get what he probably would have gotten on the open market. I just didn't expect it to be from the Penguins. The other side of it is, though, guys are about comfort, man, and they're about wanting to be in a good spot. He and Andy Chiodo, I thought it was funny. The Penguins actually put out a video today of Ned just in town skating, and he's with Andy Chiodo, the goalie coach, in the video. And those two, I mean, I know Andy really well. I've gotten to know him really well the last couple of years. He raved about Ned as a person, work ethic, the chemistry the two of them developed last year, and how much he was excited to kind of hope to grow with him beyond last season. And I know, so he's probably psyched that he's back this year. But Alex Nedeljkovic is a guy to me that, he comes out of Carolina. He's in the Calder Trophy conversation, gets traded to Detroit. He's from Ohio. People were like, oh, man, Midwest kid. He's going back to, the Midwest, the Rust Belt. He's going to succeed in Detroit. And he flamed out. I mean, he did not play well there. He was in the American League more than he was in the National Hockey League his last year with the Red Wings. So I think for him to get the stability of 2 years, he's from Parma, Ohio, which is about 2 hours and change from Pittsburgh. So he's close to family here. He's married. I believe they have a kid. If not, they have one on the way. And that's kind of a big factor in all this, in creating, what he perceives to be his best situation. And don't think for a second that there wasn't a conversation there where he signed, that they probably said to him, there's an opportunity here. I mean, we're not going to just flip the script after how last season ended. And I don't think they should. I think that this camp should be open competition. And I said this a couple of years ago when they missed the playoffs the first time. There's a lot of people that hang on to certain ideas, certain players, certain things. What I want to preface before I say what I'm about to say is, I have yet to meet a bad hockey player as a person. They're all awesome guys. But the reality is, when you don't win, there are reasons why you didn't win. And you need to figure out a way to get yourselves back in a good situation. So I think that from the Penguins' perspective, you look at last year, you look at the year before, and you say, okay, what were some of our reasons that kept us out of the postseason? And how can we rectify that? And if finding a way to just create a goaltending competition to, again, create that internal battle that maybe benefits the team on the whole is something that could be utilized, then I think why not? And I would throw Yoel Blomqvist in there as well. Kyle Dubas loves him. They're going to give him a long look, and it's going to be the three of those guys really battling in camp. I think we all probably expect to see Jarry and Ned to be the two goaltenders on opening night, and Blomqvist will be in Wilkes-Barre. But, who knows? Who knows what will happen? It's going to be fun to watch. And I also think, to Tristan Jarry's credit, he is going to be, and he should be, coming into camp this year with a little bit of a chip on his shoulder. And ready to, prove people wrong after how last season ended. I thought it was a pretty glaring thing that in the final game of the year, I still remember being at the availability with Mike Sullivan. Game didn't matter. You're out of the playoffs. You were eliminated. The only thing we knew that night was that it was going to be Jeff Carter's last NHL game. Everything else about it was just kind of like, okay, this is the end of the season. This kind of sucks because the game doesn't matter. And he still started Ned. He could have easily said, you know what, Ned's done everything at this point. The game doesn't matter. Give him a break. We'll put in Tristan Jarry, let him finish out the year. And he still started Ned. To me, that was a pretty eye-opening moment and makes it interesting going into this year. I don't think anything's given, but I definitely think there's a competition.
I want to bring up something. I hate to tie sports in with other sports because no situations are the same, but I asked if you were a football fan. And being in Pittsburgh, I'm sure you saw how the Kenny Pickett situation played out.
Yeah.
And part of me tried to figure out a correlation there. And I was going to ask you if you felt like not fully given up, but if they didn't have maybe the confidence level in Tristan last year at any point down that stretch to take a game or two even away from Ned's workload down there, where it's like very clear, like he's not a guy that probably ever in his career had started 12 games in a row.
That was a career high by a long shot.
Yeah. To not even have the confidence to turn to Jarry in that point, is that something that you can all of a sudden just flip back to and say, no, he is still our franchise number one guy? Like, I don't know.
Well, it's a great question. I mean, this is where Mike Sullivan and Kyle Dubas earn their money, right? As far as making that decision is concerned. I go back to this, not this past summer, but last summer when he was signed by Kyle. Reality is, and Phil Bork and I have talked about this a ton, you look at the rest of the goaltenders available, they made the right move signing him. You had to give him that to get him. I don't fault them. I don't fault either side there. What you have to realize, though, is that maybe when the chips are down, and I think to Mike Sullivan's credit, he did this last year, contracts be damned. Your best players play the games, and the guys that give you the best chance to win play the games. And he felt, and I think most people felt the same way, that down the stretch, Alex Nedeljkovic was that guy. Let's not forget in the beginning of the year, Tristan Jarry was that guy.
Yeah.
He was unreal in the beginning of the season. He had a couple games. I remember one game in Carolina in particular. I think it was in November. Penguins just were asleep in the first 10 minutes, and he made about 3 or 4 of the best saves of the whole season to kick off that night. He has had his moments. And there's another little silver lining here with Tristan Jarry that I think is interesting going into this year. 4 Nations face-off. Going into last year, I would say if you ask most people around the league, Tristan Jarry is probably one of the 3 goalies for Team Canada. Last year. He's not right now. He could play himself back into that if he has a really strong start to this season. It's not out of the question. I think he's really on the periphery right now based on what happened last year. But a lot of people I talked to, before last season started, when we were thinking, who will be the Canadian goalies in the Olympics? Because the U.S., you got Hellebuck, you got Ottinger, you got who am I blanking on? There's another big one, Swayman. There's all these great goaltenders that are U.S., and that's why I think they're going to win that 4 Nations, by the way. They are loaded. But the Canadians, who are their goaltenders? And Tristan Jarry is one of those guys that came to mind in the beginning of last year. He's not going to be there in the beginning of this year, but he has a chance, like I said, to play himself right back into that conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to get into some questions, like I said, here from Twitter. You just mentioned the old 2-9er Borky. Somebody said having a rotating cast he had in the booth last year. Did you have a favorite person to work with? And why is the answer Phil Bork? So they basically answered for you.
First of all, let me just say that I had done, trying to think, I obviously did only games and pre and post game shows with Borky. I had worked with him the most. I had done pre and post game shows on the radio with Colby for a couple of years. And then I did pregame shows with Mike Rupp for a couple of years too. So I'd worked with all those guys before. I never called games with Colby and Rupper going into last year. All 3 guys are different, and all 3 guys I enjoyed being around and working with. I think that they, it was obvious as you start a season, Phil and I know each other. There's a natural chemistry there. We can play off each other really well. I think by the end of the season, Army and I were at that point, and Rupper and I were at that point. But in your first few games, it's just natural. Like you're feeling each other out. You're figuring it out. Colby, to his credit, was learning the color commentary position on the fly. He was talking to a lot of guys around the league about how to do things, what worked. He had a lot of voices as far as opinions were concerned. And Rupper does a ton of stuff with the NHL Network in the analyst role, but he's at a desk in a conversation. And in-game is a way different animal because the speed is different, the excitement level is different. And I think he did a great job as the season went along and adjusting to that. So I really enjoyed working with all 3 of them. I think they all had their moments. Like I was thinking back to it. The first game I ever called on TV was with Colby. I'll never forget that. The Jarry goalie goal was with Rupper. I'll never forget that. And, the Carlson game and the what was the other one? There was another big one, was with Phil. New Year's Eve, the win against the Islanders, which I loved. That was one of my favorite games last year. Were with him. And, those kind of moments, I think, speak to the fact that there were great moments with all three. And I'm not going to go down the road of picking my favorite. I know everyone wants me to, but they're all good guys. And, I think that Phil's the most seasoned. I'm not saying anything that's not obvious there, but the other two are really, really good at what they do, and they're only going to get better with more games.
Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I thought it was interesting to have so many different guys, because I feel like you're pretty much, like, as fans, you're so used to like hearing just the same two guys every single game, but having that rotating cast was interesting from a fan perspective, like night in and night out, and having the different color commentary. I thought it was fun.
Yeah, it was different. Yeah.
Josh, I don't know if you can answer this, but these two kind of go together. Was that done as like a tryout thing to see what they wanted to do, like, for this season? Or was that the plan all along, was to have it be rotating like that?
I think it was the plan all along, honestly. Like I said, last year was kind of a sprint to the start of the season. So we found out things pretty much by the day. But I think that was kind of the plan all along.
And that question, by the way, was from our friend Nick Gregoric. I didn't want to just say this. We got to give a shout out to people that actually participate in these things.
Thanks, Nick.
But also, Matt said, in this kind of, that's why I said it goes hand in hand, because this is about the radio side. Has there been any word or any talks about who's taking on that role, with Steve Mears getting the opportunity in Columbus?
Yeah, and that was great to see from Mearsy. I was very happy for him that he got that opportunity. He's going to do a great job there. I know that it's coming. That's all I can say.
All right, there you go. There's the teaser, Matt.
Yeah. Not my news to share.
Joe said the players have their superstitions before games. Do you have any pre-game rituals that you do?
It's funny. Like I've said this before, that I don't think I'm very superstitious when it comes to getting ready and calling games. And then I say that, and like my wife is downstairs right now, and I can hear her not saying anything, but speaking with her, rolling her eyes while I'm saying that, because I'm way more superstitious than I probably even realize. I have a lot of things that I have to do. I don't know if it's like OCD, maybe it's more that than superstitions, but have to do before I do a game. Just certain things, like about how I organize my folders, how I organize my boards, what I want to have on each board is very particular as far as organizing them before I leave for the game is concerned. Once I get to the game, there's only a couple things that I do every night, but I mean, I don't know, when we do the warm up, like I said, I try to go through every player on each team. It's a warm up for the broadcasters too. Like I say that as a joke, but it's actually true. You go through every player through each team. I try to say one of my notes that I've written down about each player. And then I practice those verbs. When they pass to each other, I'm just saying, like, flicks, scoops, sends, tosses, passes, pushes, slides. Oh, that's pretty good for not saying one for the last 5 months. But like those are kind of what I do. And then with shooting, it's, fires, launches, shoots it, lets it go, blah, 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 all that kind of stuff that I'll say. And then I do one thing at the end, and actually the great Paul Staggerwald passed this one on to me that I always laugh at when I think of him, but I do it kind of as just like a joking thing with him. And then it's just become part of my routine, is the goalies, whoever they are. I practice saying their last name. So say it's Jarry down this end and Shesterkin down this end. I basically just kind of be like, Jarry, Shesterkin, Jarry, Shesterkin, Jarry, Shesterkin. And I do that for like, I don't know, 10 to 12 times. So if anyone were to be looking at me in the booth, they'd probably like have no idea what's going on, because I look as insane.
No, it's like a goalie doing like the hand-eye, the eye coordination.
Like Hellebuck. Yeah. So, I mean, that's kind of the other thing I do. And then honestly, after that, it's really just lock in. I used to, when I was upstairs with radio, I used to walk the entire length of the press box after warm-ups would end, just to kind of like settle myself in. Can't do that in the Captain Morgan Club. There's too much happening. So I just kind of take a seat and like get my notes together and get ready to go.
Gotcha.
There's actually a question I thought of while you were talking about that. We talked about a lot of some of the better moments of your first year on TV. Is there anything where something just went wrong and you just off the fly you had to basically
saying yes to
handle
coming on here?
Saying what?
I said saying yes to coming on here
was something that went wrong.
No. I'm trying to think if there was something like that. That's what I mean. Like the group that I work with is pretty good at masking some of my idiocy. So they hit a lot of it, but I can't really remember one. I don't know if you guys watched the game we did at the Mullet this year, where we kind of walked through Mullet Arena, and at the end, Colby like hip checked me. The chair that I was on, Colby's a big dude. And the chair that I was on had a broken leg, which I did not know until he hip checked me, because we practiced it, but it's different when you're live because you're kind of like, he's leaning into me, bounces into me. And then like when we're really doing it, I was talking on air when it was happening, and he was supposed to be racing back to the booth. So he slid in next to me and he hit me. And I just hear like, even with the headphones on, I hear like, and I was like, oh, didn't know what it was. And I just kind of kept my legs, we were live, and I just kept my legs really steady on the chair. And then once we went to the video, I looked down and the leg was like this, and it had just cracked. Like Colby's shoulder check had cracked the chair. So it stayed up for the rest of the open. And then they threw it in the dumpster when the game was going on. And I'm sure based on the Coyotes being gone now, there's no need for another chair there. But that was the only time there could have been a viral moment there. If I would have fallen over, it would have been real.
Yeah.
But that would not have been just a check.
Yeah. The story that you'd be telling there would be very different.
Yeah. Hey, what's your thought on that, by the way? The Coyotes going to Utah.
I'm sad to see that happen because selfishly, Arizona was one of my favorite places to go in the league. Beautiful weather, great place. We used to golf there. It was awesome. Great area to walk around. But I've never been to Salt Lake City, and I've never been to Utah. So I'm equally as excited to go there for the first time. And I think that that's going to be the type of thing that maybe has that bump of a new team. Coyotes were not that far off in the playoff picture last year. So this Utah Hockey Club, I'm not saying they're going to get in, but I could see them buoy some excitement to the mix.
They got active on the blue line. Sergachev, John Marino. I mean,
they did.
Yeah, they made some additions there.
They have a good team.
When you said you've never been to Utah, I was waiting for Tyler to jump. Tyler used to live in Utah.
Oh, I used to live in Utah. Well, I lived in Utah for a little bit before we moved to Oklahoma. Before that, I lived in Pittsburgh for 26 and a half years. But my dad was born and raised in Utah, so I have my whole dad's side of the family out there.
Oh,
but
no way.
Utah's beautiful, so you'll enjoy it whenever you go.
Yeah, I'm excited. It's at the end of a really long road trip in January that we're out there, but I'm still looking forward to it. It'll be good.
Do you have a name favorite for the actual name whenever they decide to get one, I guess?
I actually don't mind Utah Hockey Club from a fan perspective.
I don't either.
I got to say it's
hard to brand
from our perspective for broadcasters because, I can call the Penguins Pittsburgh and Penguins and Pens. I can't like saying Utah over and over again because I can't be like, here comes the hockey club. Like that just sounds bizarre. So if I had to pick a team, I always like the Yeti. I heard the Blizzard too, which I kind of thought was a minor league name when I first heard it, but it kind of grew on me. The Utah Blizzard could be a good one. I like the non-plural S with the name. That's kind of unique. So either of those, I'd be cool with those.
I think those are good options. My mom, who's not really into it at all, also said Yeti. So
yeah,
you got some. There you go. Be on board with you. John actually has a hockey question here. Is there any reason to feel more optimism about the power play going into the season in your mind?
Yeah, I mean the smart ass answer is because it can't get worse. But that was, and I say that just because that was insane, right? Like we left at the rink every single night scratching our heads about that. Everybody, players, coaches, broadcasters, anybody you talk to is like, how is this a thing? I mean, you have 4 guys, and when Jake was there, I don't want to say Jake's going to be a Hall of Famer, but you had 4 guys that were surefire Hall of Famers, and you're the 30th ranked power play in the National Hockey League. I mean, it's hard to believe. And they started at the bottom. It's not like they plummeted at some point or they, rose their ranking up. Like they were bottom of the league pretty much from early October until mid-April. And I think with like 12% or something like that. Like it's crazy. So from that standard, yes, I think it will be better. I do think that they're also in the sense of like, you get to, I don't want to say the bar has to be super low, but if this power play was 20th, that's probably 5 to 6 more wins, which is 10 to 12 more points, which last year would have been 104 points. You're in the playoffs. It's not even close.
Does the addition of David Quinn to the coaching staff, you think, do anything for that group?
Yeah, I think it does, because David Quinn, I mean, Todd Reardon was a defensive whisperer. We talked about his work with Letang, his work with Mike Matheson. It was all well documented. Cody Ceci. But I think with Quinny, it's Erik Karlsson, Norris, Adam Fox, Norris, the guys that he's worked with. No disrespect to guys like Mike Matheson, who I think is unreal and I wish was still a Penguin. Those guys were the top of their position in a particular year. And it was not 100% because of Quinn, but his coaching clearly had an effect on them. I think Erik Karlsson getting him is a good thing. I think him being really close to Mike Sullivan is also a good thing, because you need somebody that's going to bounce ideas back and forth. And I'm sure the two of them will have those conversations, and Quinn will be very much a factor in getting that power play going. Another name that I'd throw out there, though, to see how he works on the power play is our man we were talking about earlier, Rutger McGroarty. I feel like this kid could potentially be the net front presence that they've been hoping to find on the power play for a long time, in that bumper position, and just let him go to work and let him kind of just unleash the hounds type of situation. But the biggest thing for me that they're going to have on the power play is this needs to be something out of the gate. It's, again, something they will probably say, but they need to act on it. It needs to be there right away, is that's a shot first. They always are making the extra pass, especially when they had all those big guns out there in the beginning of the year. Just shoot the puck. You have 4 guys that have Hall of Fame stats. They have Hall of Fame shots. Put the puck on net and just work from there. Any shot breaks down a defensive alignment. So I'd love to see a trigger-happy power play, regardless if you're just putting it into the goalie. Lots of shots, lots of traffic in front, lots of activity. That's kind of more what I would like to see this year, and I'm hopeful that they'll have a better power play.
That's a good point about Rutger. Jake Gensel kind of providing a pseudo net front presence for them, and with how good he was at deflecting pucks, I could understand like from that element, but it was very different from like the Patrick Hornquist style of net front presence.
No doubt.
Maybe Rutger is the element, brings that element. Michael Bunting, also a guy that maybe could add that sandpaper, good term to use for hockey, to a power play as well. So I don't know. I'm certainly hopeful. Tyler, I have one more thing that I want to bring up, but do you have any other questions before I do so?
You mentioned it earlier in the show, and I actually wanted to bring it up then, but I just felt like I would save it. So you mentioned how like Dubas, he has like to balance the tightrope of you're rebuilding this team while also they're technically trying to win a Stanley Cup and be competitive still. Not necessarily how well do you think he's doing, but like how much, maybe percentage is the wrong word, but like how do you think he should balance it, or how do you think he is balancing it? Because I said this, and I think it's a kind of an odd way of saying it, but like Sidney Crosby being good at this age is a problem for the Penguins because they still have to remain competitive because of that.
Yeah,
so like you have to balance being able to be competitive for those guys like Sid, Gino, Letang, and because they're playing at the level they are, but also the cupboard is bare and there's really not a lot looking forward of this team, that whenever those guys stop producing, it's going to be like hitting a brick wall for this team. At least that's what it looks like on the surface.
Yeah, that's the thing. You got to do right by him because he's playing so well. I agree with you, Tyler. Like, it's spot on. And what I would say with what Kyle's doing is going to last year, he signs Lars Eller. He goes out and gets Riley Smith. He goes and signs Nola Chari. He trades for Erik Karlsson. There's a lot of excitement, right? Like, everyone's kind of like, holy smokes. Like, not only could this team get in the playoffs, they might have a couple rounds in them as far as going deeper into the playoffs is concerned. And it just didn't work. I give him a lot of credit for throwing those chips in because I think some other GMs probably wouldn't have. But he did. He tried, and it didn't work. And to his own admission, he says that. He's not trying to necessarily do the same thing or run it back with anything. What he's done this year is he's found a lot of guys that I believe at the end of the day could potentially be assets. You look at a guy like Beauvillier. You look at a guy like Lars Eller. You look at a guy like Matt Grzelcyk that they signed. These are guys going into the trade deadline that, if they're playing well, could potentially net you more capital as far as prospects and picks. One thing that's jumped out to me as far as the Penguins are concerned is this draft coming up in 2025. They have 3 picks in the first 3 rounds. They have 1 in the first, 2 in the third. 2026, they have 5 picks already in the first 3 rounds. So Kyle, to his credit, can kind of see what's coming here. We all can, right? We're not stupid. They're going to eventually need to make sure these picks are in their cupboard because they're going to need them to hit and have a lot of them. And he's doing that. And I would expect him to continue to add more of that. He got a young piece of McGroarty. So he's got his guy at the top of the order here. I think we're maybe a year or so away from seeing Pickering. Maybe he gets in at some point this year, but I think he's probably better suited for a year of development in the American League and going in next year. And then you kind of see where you're at. You start to fluctuate these young guys in and put them up and down the lineup and see where things go. But I'm expecting this to be a competitive year for the Penguins. I'm just not so sure that, like last year, where Kyle kind of let it draw out till mid-March before he, pulled the chute, traded Jake, and everything kind of changed. Which ironically was a change for the good. No disrespect to Jake, because they ended up playing their best hockey the rest of the season and getting in the playoff mix when Bunting came on board. But I think this year, if this team is out of the playoffs in mid-January, not contending, come early February, come that 4 Nations, I wouldn't be surprised to see him be way more active earlier this year to try to recoup some assets going forward. But I do think they're going to be competitive. I really do. I'm not just saying that because I'm with the team and I'm one of the broadcasters. Like, I think that they're a team, like, they missed the playoffs by 3 points last year. They missed it by a point the year before. We pointed out the reasons why that probably happened. They're not that far off. And honestly, aside from New Jersey, Carolina, and the Rangers, I don't think there's a team in the Metro that is, you can say with confidence, is supremely better than them. So then that gives me hope that they can, potentially find their way into the mix. Whether it's the top 3, whether it's a wild card, remains to be seen. But I don't think it's a ridiculous statement to say that they could be a playoff team this year.
This might be hyperbole and maybe recency bias, but I don't know if I've watched a worse playoff hockey team than last year's Capitals.
Yeah.
I mean, just being honest, like, that's not even like homerism because I hate the Capitals. I've watched a lot of Penguin rivals be playoff teams in the past and didn't feel that way. I thought that team did not belong.
They didn't belong. But they somehow got in. I mean, that team.
They were a playoff team. First
game of the year. Remember the Penguins went in there and spanked them, and they look completely terrible. I think we won like 4-0 or something, and I was going to be like, oh man, this is going to be like the season where Ovi tries to get 40 goals and the team tries to win 20 games, and then fast forward a few months and they're right there in the playoffs and they get in. But yeah, I agree. They were, of the 16 teams, they were 16. Let's put it that way.
Absolutely. The last thing that I wanted to bring up, I want to show everybody your call as well that I was talking about when I tweeted that. But the last thing that was tweeted to us said, wow, and this comes from a friend of the show, Eddie Provident, said, wow, you have Herb Brooks narrating for you and Josh Getzoff coming on the podcast. This is going to confuse you, but I'm going to play this clip again. We played it on the Pirates episode for the week, but we threw out a first pitch for the Washington Wild Things last Thursday. And Eddie, who asked this question, or not even question, said this statement. He filmed a short video for us of this taking place. So we'll play it again right here so you can check it out, Josh. Maybe you'll appreciate the cinematography that took place.
Okay. Great moments are born from great opportunity. And that's what you have here tonight, boys. That's what you've earned here tonight. One pitch. If you threw it 10 times, you'd probably bounce 9. Not tonight. Tonight we throw with them. Tonight we don't bounce them. And we throw a strike because we can.
I mean, that laser beam.
He literally,
it took me like 2 or 3 times watching it to notice the AI of him changing the voice to say like throw and bounce.
Bounce. That guy made me laugh. The bounce 9 times.
AI, he's gotten ridiculous with AI. He made a video last week that he put out, and luckily, like, everybody knows that he's joking, we're friends, he's messing around, but he made an AI video that was me talking and admitting to lying about the Steelers being interested in Brandon Ayuk. And it was just like, it looked real and sounds real because it's literally my voice that he took. So AI's gone way too far.
Yeah, that's insane. Scares me.
They're gonna have AI calling a Penguins game.
Don't tell me that. Don't tell me that. That's my worst fear. And probably not that unrealistic at some day.
So I want to share my screen here because this is literally, I found the game that I was talking about. I found the call that I was talking about, and I believe this is going to be a clip from VR Open Ice. So this is the game that I was talking about for sure, because I looked back on the date. So you guys can see this, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Crosby's out there. He's got the puck. Carlson loads up. Shot scores! Erik Karlsson, the hero. The Pittsburgh Penguins are back in a playoff spot with an OT winner. And Sidney Crosby has 1,000 assists to boot. What a moment. We are the Penguins, man. We don't do anything easy.
So that's the call that I was talking about. I don't know which one Tyler was talking about. That's the one where I tweeted my dog, Josh Getzoff, was on another planet tonight. Because that's the game where they came all the way back and then won in overtime, obviously. Completely forgot that was Sid's 1,000th assist, though.
Yeah, so did I, actually. Funny story about that. After I was calling it, Borky had a sheet. No, sorry, not Borky. Our stats guy, Chase Edmondson, had a sheet, and he was to Borky's right. So, like, I'm here, Borky's here, Chase is over here. And I look over at Borky, just kind of be like, unbelievable. And he, like, holds up a sheet and says, Sid, 1,000 assists. And I was like,
oh, okay.
Sidney Crosby has 1,000 assists. So, yeah, I got to give
that's not bad for on the fly.
He saved me there.
For that.
He saved me.
Yeah, I mean, thank goodness, because that would have been kind of crazy to not mention. But yeah, you know, that's what you got teammates for.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that would have been a huge miss, but at the same time, it was like, wow, I can't believe they won that game, and the place was going bananas. So it was crazy.
And at the time, it put them in a playoff spot, and that's
that night it did. Yeah. Then they lost to the Bruins the next game, and the rest is history.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Josh, we've taken up a lot of your time here. We're going on almost an hour. I told you 30 to 45 minutes. That did not hold true. But we appreciate your time, obviously. Tell the people they can find you.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at JG_PXP and on Instagram at JGPuck. That's where you can find me.
There we go. Well, we appreciate it. Everybody be sure to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell here on YouTube. Hit us in the comments with your thoughts on anything that we talked about, question for a future episode, all that good stuff. Josh, I told you I have 2 more ads to play. Now I have 1 more ad to play. Friend Haley Wagner, small business, everything custom designs. Link in the description for our merch, t-shirts, hoodies, long sleeve tees. We also got some hats. We got shorts. We got to hook Josh up actually with some merch, but that we'll save that for after we're done here. But anyways, Smitty, take it away. Need a custom t-shirt, hoodie, tumbler? Stop what you're doing. Don't go anywhere else. Check out the link in the description. Everything custom designs. Our friend Haley Wagner, small business. She can do all that for you. She even does around the 412 merch, t-shirts, hoodies, long sleeve tees, bunch of different stuff. I even got a tumbler from her as well. So go check out the link in the description. Goes directly to her Facebook page. All of her stuff can be found there. Again, everything custom designs. Haley Wagner, she does great work. Can't recommend her enough. Go check it out. There you go. And if you are on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever, be sure to leave us a 5-star review and subscribe over there. Find us on everything at Around the 412. Once again, big shout out to Josh for joining us on this episode. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.